Hello, everyone. Good to have you here. We can start with this week's edition of the Community Call. So before we begin, there's the situation with the YouTube videos is still not entirely clear to me with the new studio. I think we should be okay now. And all the links that point to our live stream should now be pointing to this call. But I'll keep an eye and make sure that it really is what it's supposed to be. Okay. Speaking of updates, I think we could do a reminder on RED. Boris, would you like to just do a brief overview of what we do for RED right now and that sort of stuff?
Sure. So let's start with supporting browsers. As far as I know, RED for audio is still behind a few trial flagging Chrome. Maybe I missed something the last couple of days. Correct me.
No, I think that's still true.
Okay, so the way it works is when the browser sends an audio stream, it encodes with each packet the previous 2 packets as redundancy, thus triplicating every packet. What we do on the bridge is we have to take care of clients that support RED and clients that do not. The most common mode that we anticipate using is just making sure that all the streams are protected with red when the receiver supports it. And also when we are forwarding streams to a receiver that does not support red coming from senders that do, make sure that we understand the format and mask any packet loss there. So in short, that's what we do. On our end, the code has been merged, both in the clients and in the bridge. It needs to be enabled in the configuration of both Gcofo and the bridge. No, scratch that, just in Gcofo's configuration and in Jitsi configuration. When that is done, and the browser support red, that is, you run Chrome with the special flag to enable it, it can be easily. I think that's all.
Thank you, Boris. Would you like to talk a little bit about our plans to do potentially more red, or maybe the dynamic enabling and disabling of video streams?
Yeah. So the potential problem with red is that it increases the bandwidth of the audio streams, and especially in a conference with multiple people speaking, that might turn out to be more than we want. There's a few things we can do. One is look at who's speaking and only protect them. The other is look at the Opus format and extract just a lower bitrate version of each packet so that we don't make a full copy. Is that what you meant to know?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
And also, if we do that, we could get away with even higher distances, meaning instead of triplicating packets, do that even more, which increases resilience to random packet loss even more. And these are all things that we plan to experiment with, so we're not sure exactly what we're going to end up using there.
Yeah, and I was thinking we could also mention the fact that we're planning on adding the changes to the bridge that are necessary for Meet to be able to only request the video streams that are being currently on display, as opposed to, just everything or last in.
Oh, right. And that's independent of the red work.
Yes, absolutely. It's just,
okay, sorry,
I thought it's worth.
I agree completely, yeah. And that involves changes in the client and the bridge and the way that they communicate constraints. So part of this work was started by George earlier this year. And when we finish that, we should be able to have much more control over the streams that a client receives so that we can do what Emil just mentioned.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that anyone else on the bridge team would want to talk about?
I can talk about the screen share loss problem.
I was going to ask you, actually. So.
Okay. So last week, we've been kind of tracking some loss issues between the bridge and receivers. And we tracked that issue down last week and found that there was a problem with when a user was screen sharing, we were assuming there was only one temporal layer in the stream, but actually Chrome is sending two. So anytime we got packets for temporal layer 1, we were confused and couldn't find a matching encoding, and we were dropping them. And that was looking like a ton of loss in the stream to receivers. So we were seeing it would vary between 5% and as high as 70%. I believe it was a function of how much motion was in the screen share. Loss reported by receivers. And we fixed that last week. And we're also tracking some audio issues, and that seemed to be correlated with that. And the hypothesis at this point is that perhaps PLI flooding because of the loss may have been straining. If there was any link that was kind of on the brink, it might have pushed it over, and that might have been causing some audio issues. But we're going to confirm that now with the fixed merge and see how that goes.
Thank you, Brian. I don't remember if I saw Jonathan in here. George, anything you'd like to add? Jaya? We've been doing some changes on the iframe. Would you like to talk a little bit about what we added recently as part of the API?
Yeah, sure. So as part of the iframe API, we added some new methods for manipulating the video on the large, the participant on the large video. So now you'll be able to actually select a participant that you want to display on the large video and resize the width and the height, and also take a screenshot of the participant on the large video. And then we added another API for getting the number of participants and their information currently in the call. And there is another update that I wanted to give with respect to Firefox. So Firefox 80 went into stable and it's been released, and we are seeing some issues with, and Firefox 80 has both RTX and Transport CC enabled by default. And we were seeing some video freezes and bandwidth estimation issues. So right now we've pushed a change to disable RTX for Firefox. And once those issues are sorted out, I mean, we're working with the Mozilla team, and once the issues are sorted out, we'll turn it back on. That's all for me.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wants to add anything here? Maybe Jonathan, a few words on VP9 status? Or
yeah, it's I mean, it's not quite ready yet, but I'm very close. I have just one more thing to do to make sure that the bridge side work to switch back from VP9 to VP8 is working properly, because we still need to support cases where some receivers don't support VP8. Notably Safari, that's not the latest and greatest Safari is our main concern. So we'll need some client-side work on that, and we'll probably work with Jaya in the next 2 weeks to work on that. But I think the bridge side stuff should be almost done. And I'll work, so I'll be working. Hopefully, we'll have news for that next community call.
sounds good. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Damien, Christo, Jacob, anyone? No one? Okay. All right, so at this point, let's open the floor to any questions from our attendees.
Hi, this is Paul. How's everybody doing?
Good, thank you.
Just a quick follow-up question on the Opus Red stuff. So you talked about the dynamic behavior you're still looking at. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Well, and I guess my first sort of correlate question to that is, in terms of the overhead, which I guess I do see it's like could be 3x as much due to red, but this would only affect, like, since there's silence detection on ideally most of the audio streams, it should be fairly minimal overhead overall, correct? Like, it's ideally if it's only like 2 or 3 people actively talking. I guess there are exceptions if there's background noise and things like that, but for the most part, I'd assume that silence detection would minimize the effect. And then I guess if you can elaborate on sort of the strategy there. I think you said something about last N, as well as using lower bitrate. In terms of using lower bitrate audio, does that mean just kind of reducing the bitrate for Opus when red is enabled, or yeah, if you elaborate on that, that'd be great.
So there's not much to elaborate at this point, just because we don't know what we'll end up doing, much less when. I'm personally not a big fan actually of the voice detection, because it lets you optimize the parts that you don't care about optimizing. So I'm much more interested in personally finding out what the benefits are of varying the red values. But all of this is just speculation at this point, so there's not much to say.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is there's 2 things with regard to silence. There's complete silence coming from someone that is muted, and with WebRTC today, browsers continue to send the regular 50 packets per second stream to the bridge. We dropped that completely, so there's no overhead there. The other thing that Emil mentioned about VAD, there's a patch in Chrome, FIPA's new version of this code, which protects only packets that have the voice activity flag set. This is configurable in the bridge, but as Emil said, we don't know whether we actually want to use it or not. And the more exciting things would be using LBBR from Opus, which does not mean decreasing the bitrate of the Opus stream, of the main Opus stream, but rather just extracting a lower version from the packets, just for the redundancy.
I see. So it means extracting the lower quality version from the packets to be used for. So is that's sort of like in addition to. So that I guess that means it doesn't directly reduce the overall quality. It's just so how I guess how is that used, the lower quality that rate version that's extracted?
It's not used. We're not doing anything with it right now. We don't know whether we'll end up doing anything, and when we do, we'd be happy to talk about it. I guess that's at this point that the whole idea is to see whether that's at all possible at the SFU level. It's supposed to be, but we don't know for sure.
Okay.
And again, the big question is whether that has any benefit at all, because maybe if 2 packets of redundancy didn't cut it, it might turn out that in 95% of the cases, when that is insufficient, 10 packets are also insufficient because you lost, 2 seconds of audio, let's say, or something like that. So,
got it.
So all of this is very early planning stage and just things we could try. All right.
Cool.
Other
Thank
questions?
you.
Sure. We have anyone else? Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I had a question about the volume on the app, specifically the iOS app. When I'm sharing a video, there's an issue where sometimes the audio will apply only to the shared video, sometimes to the video and the participants, and sometimes to both. And I wasn't able to debug it while I was building this. And it seems to be more severe of an issue on the iOS app. I don't know if this is the wrong place for this question because it's more of a bug, but
Oh, it's the right place to answer who has a question. I just don't know that we have an answer for you. So you're saying that you share a YouTube video or someone else shares a YouTube video, and the volume, the global volume of the iPhone seems to somehow behave weirdly with regard to the people's voices and the audio coming from that YouTube video.
So on Android, it'll be handled as a media control, but on at least the iPad that I was testing it on, I only had one global volume, and so I can't affect the YouTube audio volume. Or if I load it in a different order, it will affect the YouTube audio volume and nobody else's volume.
And what is that control that you mentioned?
Just the volume control.
But is that supposed to be like the system audio, or what is that? I'm not I wish Saul was here.
I don't really know because I use Android most of the time, so it's possible that there's a way to control it that I don't know how to, but I was only able by hitting the volume buttons to control the master volume, and then when I looked for it, I couldn't find anything else. So
that I think would be. There's a few developers who might be able to shed more light on this, but none of them is currently here. So you might want to start a thread on community Jitsi.org, and then we'll see if anyone there would be able to answer. I'm afraid I don't see anyone here who's been working on that part of the code.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. All right. Any other questions?
Yes, I have one question.
Sure.
how to enable the booking system in the Jitsi. I'm not talking about the GCO4 reservation system. I'm talking about booking system, which is currently running on beta.meet.jit.c. So at the bottom of start a new meeting, it has a link for book a meeting URL. And when we will click on it, we will redirect to a moderator.jitsi.net. And here we can see it's allow us to book a meeting. So how can we add this type of thing in our self-hosted Jitsi?
So I'm not sure whether we, that was supposed to be just a side tool. You're welcome to use it if it solves a problem for you. It's highly experimental, so the machines that create these book meetings are not redundant. I'm not sure if we release that open source. Does anyone here know if we got around to it? We can check. The whole point is that this is actually using existing stuff in Jitsi that lets you specify that certain domains would require a key in order to get in, and certain others would not. And then you can have a very simplistic app that generates these links, and you can pass them around. The whole point is that on an anonymous server, you can create a URL for which you are the owner, and that's kind of a way to try and get around the lack of identity on anonymous installations. And it's still something that's experimental. We don't know whether that's going to be sufficient for users to feel comfortable or to learn. So we haven't really made it public yet. But Damien, would you like to talk a little bit about how to configure that?
Yeah, it's just parameters in the prosody modules where you can specify rooms or certain subdomains to treat like guests, not specifying JWT tokens as guests, and the only moderators in the room will be those that provide JWT tokens. So it's easy as like 2 prosody configurations on a deployment which already have JWT enabled.
Can we have some kind of documentation about it?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to try and maybe try to see if we can find some time to add a few lines of documentation. Damien, do you want to drop the prosody like a sample config, or
yes, I will drop
with mock values or something?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And if this proves to be useful, we can certainly look at making it available more widely so that people can deploy it. Okay. Other questions?
I've got a question. That's okay.
Hey, Bipin, the audio that's coming from you is very distorted, and I didn't really understand what you said. Sorry, not done here. Any other questions?
Hi.
Hey.
I'm new to Jitsi. I started working with Jitsi about 2 weeks ago, and one of the things I'm trying to accomplish is to have an auto-scaling cluster of Jitsi video bridges. And I looked around and found there was something to do with Octo. I tried implementing it on Friday, and one of my questions around that is, does Octo split video streams across the video bridges, or does it only handle the high availability? Because one of the things that I saw happening was when I shut down one of the video bridges, the video streams, there was no glitch in the video. The streams seemed to have migrated to another video bridge, but there was no indication that the video streams were being split across the video bridges. I needed some clarity around that.
So its purpose is exactly to split conferences across multiple bridges. It is not really a high availability thing, right? Although it ends up assisting with high availability as well. The way that high availability and load balancing are supposed to work is through GCOFO. So you're supposed to have a bunch of bridges behind GCOFO, and if one goes away, GCOFO learns about it and stops sending conferences there. And then again, if others come in, GCOFO, as soon as they're available, can start sending conferences there. Now, the one place where this doesn't work is when a specific conference becomes too big to handle for a specific bridge. And this is where Octo helps, because at that point, GCOFO can say, if Octo is enabled, this bridge is full enough at this point, I will start sending people from the same conference on other bridges, and then I'll interconnect the bridges for that conference. That's the intention. Does that make sense, Julius?
Sure, it makes a lot of sense. One of the situations that we came across last week was we deployed a minimal Jitsi setup using Docker Compose on a server, on one server, and the utilization wasn't. It was at only a quarter utilization, but the video streams were being dropped. We couldn't find any reasonable logs to point us to that. So wondering if there were other areas that we should investigate outside Jitsi, do the stand servers and something like that, just to help us understand that better.
No, it's not. It's unlikely that is related to stun servers or even turn servers. But I don't know if anyone on the bridge team would like to offer some debugging guidelines for the situation that Julius described. Specifically, they didn't see a huge CPU utilization on the bridge, but the video streams were performing poorly, if I understand correctly. Right, Julius?
You're right.
Yeah, so Brian, Jonathan, Boris, George, Damien, would you like to offer any guidelines here?
Maybe somebody wanted to speak. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Charles from Wisconsin. I used to live in Uganda, and I realized there's a lot of UDP rerouting done in the East African region. You might want to look at the ISP side of the traffic.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I'm actually from Uganda, but currently I'm living in Germany. And thanks for the heads up. I think that would help.
So
yeah,
are you using the server in Uganda or the bridge? Where are you hosting and running it?
We're hosting and running this in the Frankfurt data centers. That's in Germany.
So there's obviously always the likelihood that, the possibility that something would be going wrong on some of the receiving networks, and you should be. So I guess one way to start would be to look at the GSM bars in the call. Those should already be telling you some basic stuff about what bandwidth estimations does each sender believe to have. What that bandwidth what estimated bandwidth does each sender have, how much packet loss there is. You could start seeing there. You could already start getting some clues. You can also check out the load, not the CPU utilization, but the load on the bridges, and see whether that's higher than the available cores, for example, which would mean that you would have more packets waiting. It doesn't necessarily match CPU utilization, although it's obviously tightly related. And George, you had some other ideas you wanted to share? Oh, before George, you come in, another way to go here, you can try a CoStats developer account. Those are free, and you can get your bridge, your deployment to report there, so that you can also investigate some of the media stream behavior there as well. That could help. Those are the clues that I have. But again, George or anyone else, if you want to add additional clues.
Very much in line with what the previous person mentioned. UDP performance would be my the first thing I would check, maybe with iPerf or something.
Thanks a lot. I'll try.
One more thing. If data channels for some reason are not working, you will be getting only low quality.
All right. So for that you would just need to upgrade. Did we fix that?
Fix in what way? So the current unstable release defaults to using the WebSockets, and the latest Docker release, I think, also defaults to WebSockets.
And those are supposed to work, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then a final piece of a final tip that I would offer is just compare the performance with Meet Jitsi, right? So that should give you a fairly good indication whether you should be looking for the problems on the server side or on the client networks. Because if you have the same issues with Meet Jitsi, then maybe it's a user network issue.
All right, sure. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, good luck. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah, I have a question, and it's more regarding the organization of the open source project. And yeah, I noticed that a lot of PRs and issues are open, and also for years. And I want to ask if it's possible to maybe make donations possible, so that the Jitsi organization can hire a guy or something to address the needs of the community and review pull requests, because I know very often the Jitsi core team doesn't have time to review pull requests, and yeah, they are becoming more and more.
Right. So, well, thank you for asking. To be pedantic, I'd say there's no Jitsi organization as an entity. There's 8x8. And sure, you can help 8x8 by purchasing 8x8 products, but that's not going to give you any guarantee that what you want is going to happen. So I guess the way things work there is, if there are pull requests, there's a few factors that matter. One is how much time consuming is a pull request to review. And that involves complexity and size and all these things. How useful it is to a problem that someone cares about. So it could be not that useful, but if it's a matter of 3 minutes, then the chances that it's then still getting integrated are pretty high. Or it could be fairly useful, but it takes 3 days to properly review it, or maybe weeks of guiding the person through successful completion. Then the chances are impacted negatively. So really, this is one of those situations that there's no simple answer. It's about trying to essentially find someone with commit rights that is interested in helping guide whoever the contributor is through, okay, what would be an acceptable minimum that would be useful to the contributor and that would be manageable to the committer. That's generally a good practice, you know. And the algorithm would be you reduce the scope, you reduce it at least until someone is ready to go and say, okay, I can manage that, right?
But
It's not a simple answer, but
yeah, but I think that that's not really the course, the complexity of the PRs, because there are a lot of PRs with just fixing typos, for example, or changing small things in the README file.
Yes, and as I said, the complexity is just one part. You know, how useful something is another part. So if it's just a PR, well, I guess sure, you know, anyone can go and spend an hour and knock out 5 or 6 PRs like that in a day, but also they could do something else with the hour that would knock out 5 or 6 other things. You know, so it's always a competition between these things.
But I think that if you have an open source project, that's a big part of it to review the pull requests of the community. You know what I mean? So even if these are small things, for example, I have a pull request open since July 7, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And Damien approved it on July 7th, 2019, and it's still open. So it's still not merged, and it's just a fix in the documentation.
Yeah,
so it's just a small thing, and that's just a small example for many pull requests.
Boris, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to say that we have a lot of these, and also a lot of ones that are just stale. They are for something, they can be rejected because they are years old. They are for code that no longer exists and so on. So if we make a one-time effort to clean things up and merge the ones that make sense, close the ones that we don't want, I think this could go a long way.
Yeah, that would be great.
Sure, and you can always obviously fork the project and manage it better. That's always an option.
I think that's not a good option.
What is that, sorry?
I think it's not a good option.
If you do have a small PR that does something and you want it merged, feel free to ping us, because often they just we just don't notice them.
So this call, for example, if you'd like to shepherd a PR, this call is, you know, good to re-raise it every now and then and ask for help from a developer and ask for feedback on, okay, what is making this hard to review? Is there anything that's blocking that I haven't noticed, or is it just a matter of people forgetting it? That sort of nudging here would be helpful on the community, on the PR itself. There's a number of ways to do that. I understand that it's not a perfect experience, or maybe not even a good one. I'm just trying to offer something useful. Otherwise, we can all agree that in a good world, these things would be better. There's no argument there.
Yeah, maybe a stalebot will help to close outdated ones.
If you'd like to work on that, that'd be an interesting conversation to have.
We do have a stalebot, but you know, it could then it closed a bunch of stuff, but I don't know. That's.
But I don't think for all of the repositories.
Yeah, I think primarily on the Jitsi meet proper.
Yeah, I've worked in a company where we have 1 day in a sprint, in a 2-week sprint, only for pull requests, and I think that would be great to have. But yeah, of course, it's not in my hand to say how you want to work. It's just my feedback.
Thank you for your feedback. And it could be in your hands. It's a matter of making sufficient contributions so that people will trust in your contributor and vote them as a developer, and then they can start helping additionally. Thanks for the feedback. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I've got a question. So recently, I've been trying to use Jitsi to integrate with a proprietary SIP system that we have. And one of the challenges, it only has G711, PCMA, and PCMU audio support. And for whatever reason, I cannot get audio to play into the conference through it. Is there any known issues regarding this?
Damien, would you like to take this one? Or would you like Mark to repeat?
Can you repeat? Sorry, yes.
So we've got a telephony system that only supports PCMA.
What system is that, by the way?
It's a bespoke system, but for testing, we've also used FreeSwitch just to try and...
Oh, okay, so it was a SIP-based system.
Yeah, so using Jitsi to try and bridge Jitsi and this other system, but for testing, we've been using FreeSwitch. And if we have Opus codecs, that's fine, but our proprietary system only has PCMA and PCMU audio. If I try those on FreeSwitch, I basically get no audio into the conference.
Well, in general, those should work, but Jitsi will be just decoding and re-encoding.
Well, actually, Jitsi doesn't need to do that because Chrome browsers or WebRTC implementations in general are supposed to be able to handle PCMA, PCMU. So one of the things that I guess you would want to try, Mark, I'm sorry I interrupted you, Damien. I'll let you continue in a second, but one of those would be to just look at the packet flow and see how far it goes, whether it actually reaches Jitsi, whether it continues after Jitsi to the bridge, whether it stops there. It'd be good to just trace the packets and see how far they make it.
Okay, I've tested between the FreeSwitch and Jitsi, and I know it's getting that far. It's after that point that it seems to drop off.
Well, but how does it drop off? There's no emission of packets anymore?
It's just like silence.
So there are packets, but they carry silence only.
To be honest, it's been a while since I've looked at the tracer, so I'd have to go back and ask. My main question was if there's any known issues with PCMA audio.
It should work in both the Jitsi modes, which are the mixing mode, where Jitsi decodes things, mixes them, and sends them to the bridge. Actually, no. It's the opposite. Things make it to Jitsi transcodes them and sends them to the bridge, and then multiple streams that come from the bridge are decoded, mixed, and then forwarded to the SIP server. So that there would be no codec concerns there. The codec concerns, there wouldn't be, like if you were to put Jitsi in the relaying mode with PCMU, PCMA, things should still work. What could fail is you end up negotiating a codec between Jitsi and the telephony installation that is not a supported one by the browser.
Okay.
But so there's nothing, to put it that way. This should work, and I don't know what could be broken in this case so that it's not working.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I can't be more helpful. Damien, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered all of it.
Any other questions? All right. Well, in that case, thank you very much, everyone, for joining today, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Sure. Bye.